What's on the silver screen? I got some takes you wouldn't believe. Popmosis Film.
Welcome to another episode of the Popmosis Film. I'm Paul, and we have here Josiah and Tyler.
Yep.
And today we actually are going to discuss a movie called Willy Wonka. Another movie that's near and dear to my heart, just like Hook. It's starring Gene Wilder. And, to be honest, there's a lot that's already been said about this movie.
Yeah.
Mainly this podcast, we're just going to talk about our impressions and our thoughts about this movie, our relationship to it. And, that's pretty much it. But, Josiah, can you go ahead and tell us about the movie?
Sure, I'll do that first. I want to say I'm pretty sure I have some revolutionary and groundbreaking things about this film to hear. So just listen all the way through the end of the episode. And if I don't say anything that interesting, just keep listening.
I hope this movie has nothing to do with candy.
That's one thing I do have to say. So this film was released on June 30th, 1971, which I think this by far makes it the oldest movie we've talked about. At this point, we've talked about the oldest film we talked about is Dark Crystal, which came out in 1982.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think so this is the oldest film. It predates all of us, which is the first film certainly that has predated everyone on this podcast. It was directed by Mel Stewart. And the interesting thing, looking at Mel Stewart's career, did not direct a lot of narrative film, mostly a documentary filmmaker. In the 80s, he did the Ripley's Believe It or Not with the Jack Palance version, which I was all about as a kid. Not really in the 80s, but later when they would air them on the Sci-Fi Channel, I would watch those reruns of Ripley's from the 80s and loved that show. So it's just kind of interesting that the director of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory directed the Ripley show that I watched, and finding that connection now is somewhat significant. It's based on a book.
Yeah. By Roald Dahl.
Have you guys heard of this book? Yes, sir. Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. And he actually is credited, he wrote the screenplay, but he's not really the writer of the screenplay. So he wrote the screenplay, but it was actually rewritten by David Seltzer, and the producers kind of came in because they felt that the version he gave them wasn't totally working. So therefore he kind of disowned the movie and did not sell the sequel rights for that reason. He was not happy with the way they went. One of the big things was the Slugworth character that they added in there. So that's it.
Oh, God.
Gene Wilder,
I have a lot to say about that. Also, a sequel.
Yeah, Charlie in the Great Glass Elevator is the sequel book.
Oh.
Yeah. So before we get to that, so Gene Wilder, in mentioning the cast, it's a bunch of kids nobody knows. Gene Wilder as the titular Willy Wonka, who does not show up, blew my mind until 45 minutes into the movie. And one of the other significant behind-the-scenes people is Harper Goff, who was the production designer. He's art director on this specifically, worked with Walt Disney specifically in the design of a lot of things at Disneyland, such as Jungle Cruise, things like that. So Harper Goff. It on a budget of $3 million, it made $4.5 million at the box office. Just context, the budget on the remake, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the Tim Burton one, was $150 million, and it made $475 million. So just how things have changed since the 70s to that came out in 2005, I believe, around there. And it is the only film that we've talked about so far. I don't know if Green Lantern might be, but it is in the National Film Registry. So that's the sort of cachet that this film has above everything else we've talked about. So at least it's kind of, that makes it, in a sense, a historical landmark. And the most interesting thing to me, the book was published in 1964, and the movie came out in 1971, which it's kind of blows my mind when I think about that in terms of the time, because that's just, 7 years difference. It's essentially a contemporary book being made into a film. It is the Hunger Games or something, not in terms of tone, but in terms of here's this popular book, let's make a movie about it a few years later. Whereas in my mind, the book has existed forever in all eternity. Yeah. And it really isn't that much older than the movie. So it's just when I noticed those dates, I was like, oh, it's not as old as I thought. But the real interesting thing about this movie to me was learning the reason it's Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory and not Charlie in the Chocolate Factory like the book is because the Quaker Oats Company helped finance the film and was making this film, and they were going to start producing Wonka bars, and they wanted the name Willy Wonka in the title for that reason. So even though it's 1971, before we think about the corporate synergy of all these big movie conglomerates and all that, that was the reason for the title change. When I learned that, it kind of blew my mind, and especially for this being at the time where you think of even commercial movies were more art. But that is it. That's all I have, sort of setting the stage for talking about a movie that I did love as a child.
So I have to say that this movie is one of those movies that is infinitely rewatchable. Whenever it's on, I'll always watch it. I always really enjoy it. And the thing that always really startles me is how the relationship between adults and kids, and it starts off in the candy shop where the candy owner, the shop owner, he's like singing about Candyman, and he lifts up the counter and hits his kid in the face and like startles his kid. And it's like kind of an action. It's kind of a goof, but it kind of like that is kind of like the spirit of a lot of like the play between the kids and the movie. And like, for instance, Charlie walks over to the factory and sees like the Wonka lights light up in a magical way. And then he gets startled by this like crazy hobo that sells knives.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever been in there. Nobody goes out. And he like hobbles away as the knives are like swinging, dangling away. And like Charlie runs home and he tells his like Grandpa Joe, like, hey, I met a knife salesman that like creeped me out. And he's right about the chocolate factory. Like it never opens. You never see anybody go in and out of there.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. The thing that's always hilarious to me is just like how, first of all, it's the first movie where kids are assholes. And second of all, it's like a lot of the adults have like a total disregard for the kids. Like they don't look at them as like innocent, little people. They look at them as like kind of annoying, like that teacher in Charlie Bucket's class.
Yeah.
He's very irritated with Charlie.
Yeah, and he can't find the percentage of 2 to 1,000, which is like insane that he's a teacher.
I think that's the joke there, though, too, which is.
Oh yeah.
My wife is a math teacher, and she would definitely be offended by that. But me, as a writer and English person, and I much more excel at that in history and things, and have never been particularly good at math, I find that hilarious. She probably would be like, "That joke is offensive," but I'm like, "That's the best joke in the movie."
See, I mean, that's something that always really sticks out, and I love the whole plot line. It's like, you have this little kid, this poor kid who has a heart of gold, and there's Willy Wonka with his chocolate factory. He releases these golden tickets to so the whole world can find them, and everybody wants to go in the get a golden ticket and go into the factory, and
which is hilarious because like nowadays, I guess especially like nobody would care to go to a candy factory.
Yeah, it would generate no interest. Like nobody would give a shit really. And I always really liked the kind of segues to like there's a guy that owns a computer that could find where the bars are.
Oh, it's all those news. Yeah, like there's all those news segment bits throughout the beginning of the film. Yeah.
And it really like kind of like I love how it gives it like a kind of a witty tone to it, almost like a British comedy or something. Like gives it kind of like kind of like a humorous weight to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on this movie?
Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first, Josiah?
Well, I go first because I want to talk about something first that's not necessarily the movie. So
got it.
The movie is significant in the book. So this is one of those movies that growing up you would watch it all the time on television.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I feel like as a kid at least, I would sort of tune in once they're in the factory and all the wacky things start happening. And I don't remember much of the beginning of the movie other than like the golden ticket and I've got a golden ticket and he's running and I remember that stuff. But the way I watched it was that because I don't know until now that I've ever watched the whole thing in one sitting. I'm not sure that I did. I don't think that I did because I know I never owned it in any capacity. I just watched it when it was on television on Saturday afternoon or what have you. But the real significance of this, so as a kid, I was, and I hope this is why it happened. So I was in reading class, writing class, English class, what have you. And I was sent to a remedial English, right? So like you would be in the English class with the normal kids for the first part of it, and then they would send you out to go to the special reading, or I forget what it was called. It was some name that was so insulting to me and humiliating. And I had to go this. And I was a kid who read a lot. I read books. I read comic books on my own, but I wasn't really great at schoolwork, and this was in the 5th grade, but I didn't really try ever. I just didn't care. And I remember specifically being so embarrassed by going to this that I was just gonna, once I was there, it kind of like, I think my parents wanted me put this remedial class so that I would get kicked in gear, because they knew I wasn't as stupid as I was performing, for lack of a better way to put it. But I went into this class and we read 2 books while I was there, I remember, and I just devoured them. One was a series of shorts called Scary Stories You Can Tell in the Dark. I don't know if you guys ever heard of those. So that was the first one we read. And we didn't read them because we weren't reading. Us kids in this class weren't sophisticated enough to read it. It was a book on tape. But the next book on tape was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I'd seen the movie. I had no idea it was a book because I was a clueless kid. And we started it on the tape, right? Listening through it. And I couldn't get enough of it. So the remedial English class thing, it wasn't every single day. It was just a few days a week. And I couldn't get enough of this book. I just wanted to hear the rest of it. So I went and read it all on my own. I loved it so much that I just went in the library and got a copy of the book and read the book as quickly as I could. And it's funny how that book is probably what spurred me on to getting me out of that class, eventually working through a lot of schooling and a master's in writing. But it all traces back to that book. And I didn't even really think about it until watching this movie the other day, that I kind of forgot that was a really important moment in my own narrative as a writer. And it started with the book that this movie was based on. And at that point, I know I had seen the movie, but I definitely had not, as I said, read the book, and I just devoured it. And it was like, devoured it like a Wonka bar, like Augustus Gloop eating a Wonka bar. So that said, the movie I left, and I still enjoy it, and I really love the songs, especially. I just enjoy the Golden Ticket song, is just the energy of the moment, and the Gene Wilder stuff, like World of Imagination, like those songs that have like transcended the movie now. That one in particular, that is just, when they play that, in the clip shows at the Oscars or something, when they want like a moment to make you feel something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the movie has resonance. It's less about the movie and more its cultural significance, which is almost like we talked about. It's in the registry, the National Film Registry, for that reason, because it transcends even what the film itself is about.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those movies. But go ahead, Tyler.
So even as a kid, I never was a fan of this film, and now watching it now, I actually like it way less than when I was a kid.
I just took a drink of water and very
I know, so sorry.
You missed your computer screen.
I sadly do not like this film. I think that there are I will equate it to kind of like Hook, but I like Hook more. There are things about this film I do love, and I think Gene Wilder is perfect. I think he is, like, watching him was magical because of how weird he was, and I don't even know if it was choreographed or not. When he is singing in the world of pure imagination, and he just has his cane out and he just puts it in front of the kids, I have a very sneaky suspicion that none of that was planned, and that those kids being scared were all legitimate. Like, I think he was being so weird. And I remember like even hearing about this before, because I love Gene Wilder so much, that like he refused to do this movie unless they allowed him to do the limp and then him do the somersault.
At the begining, yeah.
Like he was just like, I will not do this movie. And they're like, why? And he goes, because I want them to. I think, what was it? This is trivia. It's like years old, but like,
yeah. Well, what it was is at the beginning of the film, just to the context, if people don't remember, when they finally get to the factory, all the kids, the first time we see Wonka, he very slowly limps out. And I actually watched a documentary about like the making of that was from a DVD special feature last night. So he comes limping out, and even crew members that didn't know the whole story behind his ultimatum of not doing the movie didn't know if he got hurt, because the way he was acting hurt. and he comes forward, he very slowly limps up, and then he does this like tumble cartwheel thing, and it pops up when his cane gets stuck in the ground. And he said it was because then he wanted you to not know the whole time out if he's telling the truth or if he's lying. And Gene Wilder in the interview, it's so great. He said he told them that if he wouldn't let me do the limp, I wouldn't do the movie. And at the end of it, he goes, and I meant it too.
Yeah.
Like, he was just dead serious. He's like, if you said no, I'm not doing this movie. And totally he makes the movie on every level. That's one thing watching it again. It's just, he's so brilliant.
His energy is phenomenal. And I will say this, like, I do like the song True Imagination. I like when they're in the, going through the tunnel with that creepy song and everything like that. There are things about this movie I do like. It's just I don't enjoy watching it because it's so freaking random and weird. Like Slug, whatever, is so whatever. Like when he goes up to him in the cave in the tunnel, it's like the creepiest thing in the world and so out of place. Like there's a lot of things in this movie, and I hate the Candyman song. I freaking hate that song. That actor is so creepy. That song is so bad. I hate it.
It is a bit, yeah. It is. It watching it now, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a creeper number at the beginning of that movie.
And you can tell that actor is trying so hard to not be creepy, but it's just like
you just can't.
You can't when you're surrounded by that many kids and they're like, and it's choreographed. Like all the movements, all the touching is all choreographed, so he can't go against whatever they told him to do. And he's trying so hard to have like this really innocent smile and like try to act like, hey, I'm just giving out free candy, even though that's exactly opposite of what I should be doing. And but like, it's so bad. Like all of it's so bad. But I just get, I don't know. This movie to me is just, it's not magical. And I know obviously because I grew up way later where technology was a lot more. But I think like comparing it to like Wizard of Oz, like the achievements of that film and like a couple other fantasy films that come out around the same time, like I don't equate this movie to like Jason and the Argonauts, like Clash of the Titans and like Wizard of Oz. I think that this movie is very different. I think yes, showing off asshole kids was cool, and the kids are great. All the actors, all the kids were so well acted and so good. And
they were really, yeah.
I'm going to say something so bold. I actually like Tim Burton's version more, and I do not like Tim Burton.
What?
I think that
why is that?
Because this movie has so many things that are just cutaways of just things I don't care about.
I don't dislike Tim Burton's movie, but I don't think I like it more. I don't think I like it less either. It's weird. I think in part, I like this one more just because it's a musical. I think that's one thing that shines. But my thought before I lose this thought is kind of listening to you talk like, it's not as good as Wizard of Oz, which came out almost 30 years before it, like in 1939, I believe. And that was a movie that I, as a kid, watched religiously. That was magic for me. In the late 80s, I had a copy of it that was the VHS, which would probably be the 50th anniversary, came out in 1989. For Christmas, I got that and Batman on VHS, part of my Christmas gifts. And I watched those movies, both those, over and over and over again. And I would, like I said, I never felt the need to own the Willy Wonka movie.
Yeah.
I would watch it and let it be. Whereas with Wizard of Oz, which I think is a good corollary in terms of the type of film, the type of fantasy it is, it's just not that. It's like, I was thinking about it, the fact that Harper Goff was like a Disney guy who was the art director on this. It's almost like it's watching it now. It's not to disparage it. It's almost like a second level Disney movie or something.
Yeah.
Like it's like a lesser Mary Poppins to me now.
Yeah.
To me now. Mary Poppins is another one I absolutely adore.
Yeah. I will even say I'm not the biggest fan of Mary Poppins either, but I think Mary Poppins is a lot more of an achievement than this film, with the interacting of animation to live action, with also like the insanity. Like I said, like I agree with you, and actually you put into better words than I do. Like I don't think anything of it's bad. I don't think like none of. I'm not saying that none of it's an achievement. There's a lot of achievement in this film. However, I think but comparing it to some other films that have come out that done a little bit more, like I would say, like Mary Poppins is a phenomenal achievement over this film with what it did with storytelling. And also just technically. And so, and why I like Tim Burton's movies, because it gets to the freaking factory within like 20-25 minutes. Where this movie, I looked at it, it took 49 and a half minutes to get to the factory.
Oh, 49. I wrote 45. Wow, I was being generous.
49. It's 49. Yeah, it's on my timestamp right now. It's 49:28 is when they finally make it into, and then they have the signing of the contract, which is the most boring scene. I don't even remember that as a kid. And they fight.
The one thing the Tim Burton movie did, just to cut you off there, that I thought was actually clever, was it teases Willy before you meet him.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning of the film, you get little, like, some of the backstories. You don't ever really see him, but you kind of get him interacting with, like, the story when when Charlie's grandpa Joe is telling the stories.
Yeah.
That helps too, so that, because you want to see Willy Wonka, especially the Gene Wilder version. You want to spend time with that guy.
Yeah.
And that's part of why it works, though. If you had 2 hours with him, it's too much.
Yeah.
But when you have 45 minutes, it's like perfect.
Yeah, but
So,
I also,
in terms of his part, but I agree. I just want to get to the factory. It's like we talked about in our last episode with Hook. I just want to get to Neverland. I just want to get to the factory. I want to get to the fantastical. When you have a fantasy movie like that, yeah.
I will say there's a difference between comparing that to Hook, where Hook is, it's a world that you already know about, and there's already backstory that you do care about. So, like, when I was a kid, I liked him and Wendy and him and Toodles talking. Like, I actually kind of liked the human world because I'm like, oh, this is backstory. Like, he's home, and they get to express and talk about all these amazing stories, and then the kids get to hear it too. Like, I loved that. Where this movie, like you said, like, we want to get to the factory because honestly, none of that stuff matters to us at all. Because at least with Hook, before they go to Neverland, like, there's still a connection and story to tell. Where this one is just like, okay, find the fucking ticket already. Okay, just go to the gate. Like, do your somersault and let's go.
I honestly think that I like that it doesn't kind of hint at Willy Wonka until he's revealed, because he's like so mysterious, and you don't reveal him until that's the scene with the cane and the somersault. But I think the strength of this movie is its simplicity. A lot of people can resonate, like the character of Charlie Bucket really resonates with a lot of people that are like down and out, and then they go into this like fantastical world, and then
almost failing.
It's like Charlie Bucket just really resonates, and I just like how it shows the world's reaction to the chocolate factory and how all these golden tickets are coming, and you see how the kids are, how like horrible they are, and how the juxtaposed with Charlie, who's like, he gets the golden ticket because he's thinking about his grandfather and wants to buy him, his grandfather, a chocolate bar.
That's the other thing. Did Willy Wonka plan for Charlie to get the ticket?
I don't think any of that was planned.
Okay.
I think he was hoping to find somebody to take over the chocolate factory, and I honestly think that if Charlie didn't get it, it would have ended the way it was kind of hinted at, where like, hey, you guys can go.
You lose, sir.
Exactly. And then that would have been it. And I think that's how it would have ended if Charlie wasn't there. But Charlie was that rare person that he gave that gobstopper back.
Yeah.
And and few people would do that. But like, Charlie was built up to be such a good person that you believe he would do that, and you believe that he deserves this factory. And
oh yeah.
And so I like the fact that it kind of withholds from going to the chocolate factory and you meet Willy Wonka for a while, because you use that time to really build up Charlie as this good person that like takes care of his grandparents that are like laying on the beds and takes care of his mother. I'm like,
I don't love that part. Yeah, the grandparents. But I want to say, going off of what Paul's saying, I love the character of Charlie, and particularly in this version, kind of comparing it to the Tim Burton version, because this Charlie's like, he has a job. He's the newspaper boy. He's like trying to do for his family. So it means more when he gets that chocolate bar for his grandpa, and he gives his last coin. Like it's like he sacrifices for his family, as opposed to just, because that's why it bothers me, the grandparents. Like, this poor kid is out there working, you're just lying in the bed.
Yeah.
So that's one part that drove me crazy, the grandparents.
I will say that I was reading up some more trivia on this film as well, and it actually makes, I want to say this, that it makes so much sense in this film watching it. but the guy who played Grandpa George was nearly blind because of poison gas in World War One. So he was instructed to look at a red light to guide him. If you watch when they get released into the first part with all like everything's edible and everything like that, he runs directly almost into a mushroom, and you just see Charlie pull him out of the way. And throughout the movie,
Oh shit!
like you see him, like he's not present. And now I'm watching it as the whole time I'm like. That's odd. Why is he going there? Why is he doing that? Why is he looking that way? And now it actually makes so much more sense. Like, he did a great job, especially for almost being nearly blind. But like, I just wanted to say that's hilarious and sad at the same time.
And another thing about Charlie, what really stands out is like whenever any of the kids go into danger, like when Augustus Gloop, he falls in the river, he gets stuck in the pipe, and then he shoots out. Willy Wonka is just like, oh, get it. He plays his flute. The Oompa Loompas start dancing, and he's like, kind of doesn't give a shit. And then Charlie's like, hey, is he going to be okay? Like, he's the only one that's concerned about the other kids.
Yeah.
Even though those kids don't give a shit about him. And like, yeah, he's the only one that's like concerned. And I never noticed that before watching it. That he's the only one that's concerned, and I like that thread that he has that sense of empathy, and what's hilarious to me is just how whenever like when what's her name, Violet Beauregard, she like swells up into like a blueberry.
Yeah,
they're like, oh well, she Gene Wilder's like, oh yeah, she might blow up. They're gonna squeeze her, like all nonchalant, like it was like nothing.
I love it too.
And then he plays his little flute, that weird little flute that and the Oompa Loompas come out and get them. But yeah, I like it's interesting to see Charlie Bucket compared to the kids, like Mike TV is like kind of a dick with his like cowboy suit. And,
I hate that kid's voice so much.
Oh yeah,
so much. Like just with a burning pot passion, I hate that kid's voice.
And then Veruca Salt, I want it now, Daddy. It's so annoying. So, but yeah, I just love that Charlie Bucket, and I think that what is interesting to me is that it kind of reminded me a little bit like Harry Potter, like that kid that's like under poor circumstances that kind of rises above, his station and becomes like a wizard or becomes the owner of a chocolate factory, that he's kind of like the chosen one. And a lot of like what J.K. Rowling takes from, a lot of what J.K. Rowling does for Harry Potter, she kind of takes from like Roald Dahl and like certain themes and like characters of Roald Dahl and like kind of expands upon them. I thought that was kind of interesting and
magical candy for sure.
yeah, man.
But just thinking about Charlie Bucket though, like the character, I think. The things that really excel in this movie, it's particularly Charlie and the grandpa have a lot of chemistry together that works really well. And the chemistry with Charlie and Willy Wonka and Gene Wilder. So the kid is just perfect. Because I was watching the Tim Burton one. What's Freddie Highmore, correct? Right? He's probably a better actor.
Yeah.
But there's just something about the original actor, who I don't even have his name in front of me,
Peter
who played
Osgood.
Charlie. That he just something about him just as a person, I think, that is fundamentally that kind of way. I saw the documentary where they were talking about what the different kids do. I don't remember all of them. Mike TV's like a financial analyst now, of course.
I actually met him.
Different things, but
I actually met him and had dinner with him at Austin Comic Con years and years and years and years ago. I was stuck basically at his table. I couldn't move because Hayden Panettiere, because this was around like when Heroes came out, and like she was coming through, and like I was like stuck in between her line. And then he was like two things next to her, and then it was the person who played not Violet but the other one, the brat. It was
Veruca.
Yeah, Veruca. It was both of them, and then it was Hercules from the '90s. Why am I forgetting his name?
Kevin
and
Sorbo.
Kevin Sorbo and his line. So I was like stuck. So I just talked to them both for the longest time. And Veruca Salt was actually like, she wasn't wheelchair bound, but she did have a wheelchair and it was a lot easier for her to get around. But Mike was still there. We were talking about Star Trek and we were just joking around. And he was like, I don't know where to get dinner around here. And I was like, oh, I'd love to. And Doug Jones was actually supposed to join us as well, but was unable to do so because he got pulled into a different thing. And then he also offered me the guy who did my TV also invited me to the screening of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I couldn't go because of I was too young, I was too late. But yeah,
that's cool. But anyway, what I wanted to say about that's awesome. What I want to say about Charlie Bucket, the actor, he went on to become a veterinarian. You know,
yes.
like just that. When you hear that, that's that guy.
He only
that's
did this
person
film.
that just cares about. And it's, I feel like it must be fundamentally who he is, that it was why it works. It's like the part that the one and only movie role he was meant to play and one and only character he was meant to be is Charlie Bucket. And it just lands perfectly. It's like this perfect casting. And the moments with him, like when Paul was talking about where he dares to kind of be hopeful and dream. And then he opens a chocolate bar and then there's no ticket, and he says to his grandfather, I bet those golden tickets make the chocolate taste terrible. Just like trying to still make it, it's like, it's okay. The chocolate tastes better because the golden ticket's not in it. Just the character, it's so strong. Like, what there's some things that definitely don't work about this movie watching it back, but why it is like a historically significant movie, those things are so exponentially good, I think.
He's a great actor. He's a great child actor, you know, and good for him for, you know, giving it up to do something that you care about more.
And I think the thing is with him is just he has a sincerity that I think is hard for a child actor to put out. And you know, he feels like a real kid. Like every time I see his performance, I don't think, oh, this kid's acting like a kid. He's a real kid. And, you know, when he gets that golden ticket, it's like, I mean, you feel really happy for him because you really feel that he deserves it. Yeah. You know? And, I mean, he did a great job. One thing I wanted to point out is when the Oompa Loompas are dancing, you see like these words flash up. And actually, that's one of like the earliest uses of vector graphics.
Oh wow!
Or computer animation, and so like later on, that, you know, kind of evolved in like Pixar and How to Train Your Dragon, all that stuff. But yeah, that was like one of the earliest uses of like
crazy
CGI was those vector graphics putting out the words.
I did not know that. I'm actually reading up on some things as well, and I stumbled upon the one who played Violet. Did you know that she originally auditioned for the role for Princess Leia?
Oh wow,
that's crazy. Huh. Anyway,
so and then another thing that
did she get it?
We'll find out when it comes out next year.
You know,
we'll find out when
she was the body double.
We'll find out when we do a podcast about that movie.
Yeah.
Right? in Rogue One, she was the body double that they CGI'd Carrie Fisher's face over.
Oh God.
And another thing that was interesting. Have you guys seen Lost? You remember that show?
Yeah.
Famous show.
Yeah. So the very basic plot of Lost is very similar to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You have all the parental issues that all the characters had. You have candidates like the children they were chosen by the golden ticket. The island is like the Chocolate Factory. Jacob is like Willy Wonka. He's trying to choose his successor based on who's the best of the candidates.
Yeah.
The Man in Black is like Slugworth, you know, the evil opposite. So there's a lot of commonalities between the plot of Lost, or the basic plot of Lost, and Willy Wonka, which I thought was pretty interesting.
That's crazy.
Who's the character of Desmond then?
Desmond? Maybe Grandpa Joe.
I was hoping you say Charlie, because you know why Penny is named Penny in Penelope. It's because of that the character on Lost of Desmond and his Penny that he would pursue, which is based on Lady Penelope from the Odyssey,
Yeah.
right? Who is this? And we named Penelope because it's like we wanted her to have a name of a person that is worthy of this epic quest that you would go on. You go to the ends of the earth to get this person back in your life and keep this person in your life, and that's why Penny is named Penelope.
Oh, wow.
Because of Desmond and also for that Lost. And we're not like super huge Lost fans, but we loved that character and what it personified in that quest for Penny.
That whole relationship with Desmond and Penny and how they're trying, like I love that whole, a lot of people, that's the one thing that bothers me. Like I love Lost. I think it's a great show, and I won't go too in depth with this because it's about Willy Wonka, but I think it's a great show, and like moments like that, like great character moments, are really what makes it, elevates it, on a whole level. And everybody kind of takes the 6 seasons and they think, oh, the ending sucked, and that's it. But if you really watch a show, there's so much depth to it, and so much great stories, great characters that are kind of thrown by the wayside because of that. But
particularly in the early seasons, like there's some like those first certainly 2 seasons, I would say really, really, really fantastic stuff.
I didn't like the second season, so I stopped watching it. But I know the ending. I watched the last season and was very confused.
I've never seen the last season. I haven't actually seen the end of it. To be fair, like there's a certain point where I'm just bored with it and kind of over it. So even though we kind of sort of named our daughter after a character on that show. So anyway, Willy Wonka.
Yeah. Willy Wonka. I mean, it's a good film. Not my favorite, but it is. I mean, it's an achievement, man. It's really hard to talk about this film because of it's one of those movies that I just universally liked, and I'm just one of those few people, and I was one of those few kids who just didn't care for it because of it just felt so off, and not even just because of like the content of like how dark and weird it was, but it was just like the slug, whatever that guy's name is, and the Candyman song, and like some of the songs are in it so bad, like the Come Home Charlie or the Charlie whatever, like the mom song is so bad, it's so bad. And
the mom song is pretty awful. It's funny, the first the Candyman song, I don't hate it, but that song and the mom song, those two, I'm like, yeah, like these are you forget those songs because the other songs are so good, but those songs the mom song is not good at all.
Yeah,
really, 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 really bad. I'm thinking, why are you letting this woman sing?
And then the grandpa sings, and that song is horrible. And I'm like, oh my god, why are you singing? And I think that's what it is. It's like this is one of those movies where it just should have been 20-minute build up and then factory. Like it's so weird that it was just, and like the factory, like watching it now, the factory is so rushed. Like I don't know if it was because of budget or whatnot, but like
I mean that's what $3 million buys you in 1970. I think that's what you're seeing. You know what I mean? Because even then, that's not a ton of money to spend on that kind of what's supposed to be a big fantasy movie.
Yeah.
But at that time, but watching it though, I do say I think Paul kind of was on the same page with me. I'm watching it though, even though I forgot how long it takes to get to the factory, I actually like it that way. And part of it is because I like a lot of the gags that they do there. The news stuff is really funny. The computers thing Paul mentioned, there's a lot of really funny bits in there. Plus you get really good Charlie character stuff.
Yeah.
I do feel like within that, things that you could cut out are like Candyman song, mom song, things like that. Some of the grandparents in the bed, maybe stuff, so that you could get there a little bit quicker, but not like maybe 15 minutes, 10 minutes less. But I do. There's a lot of things I like in there that build the anticipation to getting to that point of the factory. And I'll say this: part of it is watching it now. The factory, like you kind of said, Tyler, seeing it now, it's like, yeah, this is kind of janky. Whereas when I was a kid, I'm like, oh, but now I'm like, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like
it definitely feels like a set. It's not as majestic. And the thing is, like, when the movie came out, I don't think I think the idea of even like a blockbuster wasn't a thing yet. I think Jaws was the first blockbuster, right?
Yeah.
And that
Yeah,
was
but there were still big studio films, like we
Yeah.
talked about Wizard of Oz, going back for many, many years.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
so it's not like it didn't happen. Biblical epics would be the blockbusters of the day,
yeah,
right?
Clash of the Titans
Historical,
and stuff.
yeah, those kind of movies. Well, Clash of the Titans was a little bit later, but in the '60s, things like Ben-Hur, movies like that were
It's a
like
mad world. It didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Those were the big. That was the equivalent of today's like blockbuster.
Music.
Was
It was a little bit different.
Was this movie marketed in that way, or was it marketed as like, here's a movie?
I don't think so. I think it was a significantly lower budget than some of those films.
I kind of get the impression that it was like marketed almost like those, Disney films in the '60s, like Old Yeller.
Yeah.
Kind of under the radar, like, here they are, enjoy them.
So yeah, like that's exactly what it was. It made, like I said, it made $4.5 million at the box office on a $3 million budget, right? So it's a profitable film. You make it, you get, it's like that model where you can make it for X amount of dollars, get it out in the world and make money off of it without breaking the bank. You don't make a ton of money, but you make money. You don't lose money on it. Like that was what a lot of those kind of films you're talking about were. Although those Disney films were probably significantly cheaper, like the Old Yellers of the world, as opposed to something like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is a much bigger budget Disney film. So it's definitely still on the low end on that. So yeah, it was very much a kids movie,
Yeah, and I think
it was before the idea of the 4-quadrant kind of film existed. That every market will want to watch this movie, kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like look at this movie as a movie that's very sincere and very timeless. And maybe the sets don't look as great as they should, but I like that simplicity.
Yeah, I mean, it still takes place in a factory. Like it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, like Gene Wilder's performance, Peter Ostrom, everybody that does like such a great job. I love the the World of Imagination, that song. There's so many memorable moments in that movie. And, I think that even a kid today, if they were to watch that, I think they would be nostalgic for this movie. Because, like, when I saw it, I was, probably like 8 or 9. And it was a movie day in my class. And we were watching this on, like, a VCR on top of, like, this, like, steel TV stand that was, like, strapped down, like earthquake proof. And so we're watching it.
Roll room to room.
And it's been like, 30 years later, and I still look back at this movie fondly. And, you can put all the special effects in the world on a movie, but if there's not a good story, good characters, there's not the sincerity in the heart there, like, it won't stand the test of time. And so I think, I look at this movie, and I think that, if you were Penny were to watch it, I think 30 years from now she'd be nostalgic about it and talk about it too. It's just one of those timeless movies, and I think it just always will be that way.
Yeah,
I agree. And one of the things, like you said about one of the things, even though the sets might not be as sophisticated and fancy and as we want them, they were still impressive enough to me as a kid that, like I said, I loved watching the stuff at the factory. And I read that the kids in the scene, that the first time on camera in the film when they're entering the great, big room with the waterfall and all that stuff. That's them seeing it for the first time. And it's sincere. They're reacting to it. And because even if I were to see that today as an adult walking in, I would be impressed by that.
Yeah,
especially like watching it. Exactly. Watching it, though, I was thinking, like, it reminds me kind of like if, like, as opposed to a movie set, like maybe like something you would see at like an amusement park that you're like, oh, this is cool. And it kind of grabs you in that way. That's kind of the way this felt to me, like the set design aspect of it, at least.
Yeah.
So, but knowing that, and it would be really interesting. I'm sure Penny would actually like this movie now as a 3-year-old. She might not have much tolerance for that first part, but once you get to the factory where there's, like World of Candy, a chocolate river, there's kids that are becoming, grapefruits or whatever, getting shrunk down, the Mike TV thing. She would love all that stuff. She totally would. Like, I know she would. Like, I could just, but I would have to skip the first 45 minutes for her to be into the movie. I know that. She is 3, so.
You know, the funny thing is, I actually read when I was a kid. I read the Charlie and the Glass Elevator, or the Great Gas Elevator book, and it's kind of neat because he like goes to the moon and like encounters aliens and all this other stuff. And it kind of would have been neat if they actually did a sequel to it with Gene Wilder. I think it really would have worked really well.
I've never actually read the sequel. As much as I loved the first book as a kid, I haven't
read either one of them.
Yeah.
Is there a third one?
It's not bad. I mean, the last time I read it, I was like 6
I don't think.
or something. I was like really young, so I don't remember too much of the story details. But you know, if you're a kid, it's worth reading. You know, it's a good book. It's. I feel kind of bad because there's not much to really say about this. It's a classic, and it's kind of hard to put like your own spin on this movie. It's so ingrained in our pop culture.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's different. It's different than even anything we've kind of talked about because it's significant in a different way. It's like iconically significant. It's like it's almost to the point where the content doesn't matter as much anymore because it's just so important as just an entity. So
yeah, like it transcends the material by far. And yeah, a lot of that has to do with Gene Wilder. His performance is just, amazing.
He is phenomenal.
You know, I was thinking when in that creepy tunnel, I feel like that sequence in the creepy tunnel is like all of the year 2020 so far. Exactly that creepy tunnel.
Don't know where we're going.
It's just like what in the world is happening here? Like, we still have, what is it? April? No, May? We still have 7 months to go.
Yeah, it's May.
So we're halfway. As part of the creepy tunnel, we're at the part where the chicken's head gets cut off. That's where we're at. And we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, it's funny watching. It was, I was in just after college, and I was living in Colorado at the time for a year. I was like working with troubled teens, and my mom and my brother came out to visit me, and the movie was on television at the hotel that my mom and my brother were staying at. So I came from where I was working, and I went over to pick them up, and I was hanging out in the hotel. My brother's watching the movie. He's like, "Man, did you remember how freaky this movie was?" Because he had not watched it since he was a kid, and it was that sequence where he's watching. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I block that part out of my head because I just think of not the pure joy of the scene, but the absolute terror of it, where we're watching it, at that point in our 20s. So,
yeah. So I want to ask you, Tyler, because you're kind of in the minority that you don't really like the film. What would you do to fix it? What would you do to make it better in your eyes?
Oh, I think I already said it. Just get to the factory. Cut out some of the bad songs. Maybe slow down. They spend a lot of time for you to kind of get to know the kids at the beginning, and then you don't really get to know them during the movie, except for maybe I think Mike TV and Veruca are the ones that you actually know at all. And you understand them a little bit more. But Augustus gets shafted, and even Violet, you're just kind of like, I don't really care or know. Like, I didn't understand the chewing thing didn't even seem like a big thing at all. Where Tim Burton's version did. I think this probably would have been maybe a little bit more, just in the fact more jokes, more something, more weird stuff. Like Gene Wilder, who was an amazing improver too, have him just be weird and go on tangents and stuff like that, and confuse the kids and whatnot. I don't know. That's what they could have done. I did not really care for the new stuff. I know you guys liked it. I didn't, I guess. I understood what they were going for, but it got old a little bit, and I don't know. This movie just doesn't work for me, and I think that's what it is getting it to maybe what Tim Burton wanted to do, or what he did, and I think he probably wanted to do was just get to the factory. Everything else, build it up, get everybody to understand who every character is, and then expand on them in the factory and not before. So
I kind of wish we had more time in the factory, and I kind of wish that because in the book, in the Great Glass Elevator, what happens is it begins with them going to Charlie Bucket's house and getting all of his relatives, and tell them, hey, you're moving into the factory. And so if we kind of had maybe if it ended on that note, when they're in Charlie Bucket's house, and they're telling his whole family, like, hey, Charlie owns the factory, and so it kind of ends on like a, crescendo, like, but, the way the movie ends is you're up there.
Well, I would argue that it ends on a crescendo. It literally ends on the highest possible note as they're rocketing through the sky. I mean, literally, it's actually ending on a high note.
I mean, I feel bad for the parents, and I feel bad for the other grandparents who miss out on all this stuff, and they get to tell them like way later on. Oh yeah, by the way, I own the factory now, and it's kind of like oh man, I feel so bad for those other grandparents. Who got shafted.
I kind of put it this way: like they had that crane shot of them shooting up, out of the factory, and then they just ran out of money. So like, oh fuck it, we have to end it. Like just end the movie. Yeah. So
I don't care enough about the other grandparents to go back to them.
Oh, really?
So
I mean, so Charlie does.
Okay, let's say for instance you were one of the kids. You got the golden ticket. You were given a gobstopper. Would you sell Willy Wonka out and give it to Slugworth? Or, what would you have done in that same situation?
Nah, I wouldn't have.
No, I would not have. I legitimately wasn't that kid. I'd be too afraid.
Yeah.
If that was the guy, first of all, I'd be too afraid of Slugworth as he appeared. He was just terrifying. So I would be too afraid of him.
How hilarious would it be if one of the kids turned that guy into the police and he gets arrested, and Willy Wonka's like, well, my best man is in jail right now for going up to a kid.
It blew up in Willy Wonka's face, his whole scheme to test the kids with Slugworth.
I think I honestly probably would have just left after Willy Wonka's like, you lose. I'm sorry, sir. Good day, sir. Good day. And I probably would have just left. I wouldn't have went back and gave him the gobstopper. I would have just been like, man, my life is miserable, and nothing came of it.
And this piece of shit guy is yelling at me.
Yeah, and I had dreams, but they were dashed by Willy Wonka.
I probably would have thrown it at him, fine, and then threw it at him to try to hurt him too, and then stormed off. That's probably what I would have done.
And I like how the good day, sir.
I don't want to make I don't want to make myself sound too noble, but I hope that I would have done exactly what Charlie did. I feel like the reason I write is, and I care about people, and I've always been good with empathy, which some people in our world are not. And I think that that's what Charlie has.
But that's the thing is,
he has empathy, and he can see who Willy really is, and he can see that he's just a person that's hurting. And sure, he's acting like an idiot, but Charlie's like, I'm suffering, and Charlie is like, you're suffering too, even though you have all this. You're kind of alone over here. I think that's why Charlie is Charlie.
Yeah.
You can question Willy Wonka's motive in a separate sort of way, but
yeah.
I mean, I definitely
also, I'm not a fan of candy you have to suck. So
see, I wasn't even that sympathetic with that Willy Wonka, with Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka. I don't know why. I was more sympathetic with Johnny Depp's, because Johnny Depp, you see him with flashbacks, and you see him distraught, and you see him sad. Where Willy Wonka in this, you see him more as just a weirdo, and he's just trying to have fun with people.
I think it's different, though. I think that movie beats you over the head with it.
Yeah.
Because that's the part I didn't like, whereas, it's like, yes, be sympathetic, because if you didn't have that, and Johnny Depp is so creepy and weird in that movie, if you didn't have that, you'd be like, hey, it's Michael Jackson from which we touched on in our Hook episode, which we'll leave it at that. But I think the Gene Wilder, it's just, there's something about, I feel like just as a performer, if you were to see that person in real life, you would just be so interested in him and just so captivated by him that you might not know if you like him or not, but you want to figure out if you do, if that makes sense.
No,
that's kind of.
I agree. I agree, but that's the thing is, I still don't understand him, though. That's why I don't sympathize with him. I am intrigued, but I'm not. But I don't connect.
I kind of. I don't know. I was always very empathetic to Willy Wonka, and kind of wondered like, why is he that way? Like, why is he so eccentric? Is it because he's living alone with his Oompa Loompas? Like, why is he that way? And so I think, like, I look at Charlie Bucket, and I kind of look at his character as like somebody who honestly is like a better person than I am. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's somebody that I wish I could aspire to or be like that, to where I would, be empathetic and give the candy back to Willy Wonka. Like Josiah said, I'm hoping I would be that way.
Yeah.
But and so that's what I really love about Charlie Bucket is that he's just a very just a very good person, and I really kind of gravitate towards that. How just a good person he is, and
Yeah.
I'll say this about myself, just going back to the question of the everlasting gobstopper. Would you put it on the desk? I probably wouldn't have taken it when Willie gave it. I would have been like, no, because I would know what that thing meant, and it would scare me too much to even take it from him there. It's like, I don't want that power. Like, so I wouldn't have had it to have that dramatic moment where I put it back on his table. I wouldn't have just been like, no, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah.
I just ate a piece of that tree, so I'm full.
Nope. So I just want to close out, and you guys have any final thoughts about this movie?
No. I mean, I'm glad I revisited it. It's nice to watch it again. I haven't watched it since I was a kid. I didn't like it as a kid, so I had zero desire to watch it again. So I'm glad I watched it again.
Good.
And I'm glad I watched it again too. Like I liked it quite a lot as a kid. I would never say I loved it, but I really did like it a lot and enjoyed it, and enjoyed watching it again with different eyes as an adult. And it's one of those movies that I look forward to watching down the line with my kids. I can say that, and sharing the songs in particular. That's what the good songs, not the mom song, but the good songs. Sharing those with the girls.
I mean, I'd have to say, it's one of those movies that just whenever I see it, it cheers me up. It's such, just for me, just on a nostalgic level, it works so well, and it works so well now. And so it's hard to be like analytical about it, because it just like holds a special place in my heart, this movie. And it's hard to, I don't know, it's just hard to pick it apart. And it's kind of funny to be in that situation, because like when we reviewed Green Lantern, there's like so much to pick apart.
Yeah,
there's just like, and even Hook, there's like so many.
It's a lot easier to hate as opposed to to talk about the good things. That's why like you look at Yelp and stuff like that. It's a lot easier for you to write a negative review than a positive one.
Yeah, like Hook, I see just a lot of missed opportunities.
Yeah,
and like. I look at Hook, and it's like if they just fixed things here and there, editing, all that stuff, it could have been a classic in the way that this movie is.
Yeah.
That it would have resonated with children nowadays as well. Because I think if I were to compare the two movies, I think Hook over time will kind of get lost, and like people will just kind of forget about it, and we'll still look at it fondly, but it won't. I really doubt like kids are going to look at it and be nostalgic. But I think this movie, kids will look at it and be really nostalgic about it, and show their kids this movie. Like Star Wars or like Ghostbusters. Like it's just one of those movies that will endure from as time goes on. And so I love this movie. It's hard to
and that's the thing. Just because I don't like it doesn't like. This movie is well made. Like the choices I want them to make is, it may not be from. I recognize it's not probably for most people. Like this movie is made so well, and it is a feat for for what it is, especially for such a low budget compared to the other movies like I didn't really know about. Like that's the thing is like it was my personal taste, but I understand and I recognize that this is a classic, and this is one of those movies. Like this is a big deal, and the choices that were made were great. It's just I'm not the audience for it.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
and I just think, and I think in movies like this that are considered classics, I think it's always great to kind of be open to the different opinions, because like movies like this are just like widely regarded as a classic. And I always like hearing, like, when people for instance yourself don't like the movie, I like hearing their opinions and the reasoning behind it. Because it's kind of interesting to hear that.
And I think that one thing that's like clear though, it's like even if you don't like it, it's a hard movie to hate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just one of those movies. It's hard to really hate. Like, might not like it. Like, I don't love it, but I like it a lot. But I can't see hating it. But I'm sure there are some. But it just
I don't hate it. I just rather
I know.
not watch.
But I'm saying there's enough things in this movie that there's something you're going to grab onto and say, oh, that works. That works for me. You know.
Yeah.
So one thing is, back in the day, I used to play Animal Crossing on GameCube, and you could put like a song for your town, and my song was World of Pure Imagination. So whenever you visit my town, it would play that, and it would play that. And and another thing is, when I was a little kid, I had an aunt that would take care of elderly people, and they were always in their bed, and so I'd go and visit them. And so, like, they'd have two people in the bed. And so, like, that whole thing with the grandparents and Charlie Bucket, like, I used to deal with that, like, when I was a little kid. So it's like, it was a very specific thing in my childhood that, like, I was like, wow, that's weird that that's in this movie.
And they have bedpans, too, under there. When you,
they did.
There's a
like,
bedpans.
They were, like, really old people. And the thing is, like, I'm half Filipino, half German. And, like, I always would have, like, random Filipino relatives, like, staying with my aunt. And they would lay down on these beds, and I'd visit them. And they're always like, some of them are super old and like bedridden. And I don't know, it's just weird to see like a very specific thing to the story, actually, like from my life. So, yeah, I mean, that's about that. I'm going to wrap up Willy Wonka.
Nice.
And, thank you guys for joining me on this wonderful discussion of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Hope you all are staying safe and healthy. And anything you guys want to say anything you guys want to plug?
No, I mean, hopefully the next episode we can do in person.
Oh yeah, no, I would love that. That
would be amazing. That'd be wonderful. So you can find me at Josiah is Right, WRITE, where I talk about stuff like this, and you can see myself, usually just me talking about it, but Penny, my kid, is with me. I talked about her a bit in this video, as it is a kid's movie. And the last thing I have is my favorite line from the movie, and the creepy way Gene Wilder says it. I won't do it any justice, but we are the music makers. We are the dreamers of dreams.
Nice.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Like.
And I am the nightmare. I'm just kidding. No. And that's how you ruin it. Alrighty. Well, thanks for listening.
I'm gonna cry myself to sleep tonight. That's all I know now.
Thanks for listening, and you can check out all of our shows and offerings on thegrandgeekgathering.com. All of our podcasts are available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and everything else. Please rate and review. That would be awesome. And don't forget that our YouTube has Let's Plays and also this show, as well as our new baking show, the Grand Geek Eatery, and our music has been provided by Carlisle Laurent. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, don't forget that I stream on Twitch. So come and join the gathering. Have a great week. Be safe. Wash your hands. Say hi. And
that goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially behind masks when you're out.
And,
do a somersault.
Charlie Bucket. More people in this world need a Charlie Bucket. Be Charlie Bucket. Don't be a Veruca Salt.
Yeah, give people gobstoppers.
At least if you're going to be another character other than Charlie Bucket, be Gene Wilder or Willy Wonka, so at least you're interesting.
Yeah, do a somersault.
There you go.
Alrighty.
And kind of terrifying at times.
And GGG.
What's on the silver screen? I got some takes you wouldn't believe. Popmosis Film. Grand Geek Gathering.